Hello everyone, welcome back to the series of antimicrobial agents, and I hope you might have seen the lectures by Dr. Rahul Kunklor sir on tetracycline and chloramphenicol. So both these group of drugs belong to a class which inhibit protein synthesis. Now we are going to discuss today regarding the aminoglycosides, which also have the same mechanism, that is they inhibit the protein synthesis. So let us start with today's topic. We are going to discuss regarding the classification of aminoglycosides, how do they act, what are the pharmacokinetic properties, what is their antimicrobial or antibacterial spectrum, what are their adverse effects, contraindications, drug interactions, as well as uses of the aminoglycosides. So aminoglycosides have similar structure, all of them. They have the amino sugars joined by a glycosidic linkage to a hexose nucleus or an aminocyclitol nucleus. So all of them have similar structure. Aminoglycosides can be classified depending upon the source of these chemicals. Either they are derived from the fungus, that is streptomycetes, or the fungus Micromonospora. They are named accordingly, like streptomycin, kanamycin, neomycin and tobramycin all end at by mycin, mycin, while those derived from Micromonospora they end with mycin, like gentamicin, amikacin, netilmicin and sisomycin. They can also be classified depending upon whether they are given by systemic route or they are given by local route. So most of the drugs are given systemically except for neomycin and paramomycin. Now let us have a look at the protein synthesis process. The messenger RNA that is formed inside the nucleus comes out of the nucleus into the cytoplasm, where it attaches to the 30S ribosome unit, and then the 50S ribosome unit attaches to it. Before that, the first codon that is read by this 30S ribosomal unit leads to attachment of the first transfer RNA, which brings up the amino acid methionine, so that the initiation of the process occurs. The attachment of 50S unit along with the 30S units makes it a ribosomal complex which runs along the messenger RNA as if a train runs along the track. Now there are two sites, that is the P site and the A site. P site is the peptidyl site that is present on the 50S ribosomal unit, where the elongated amino acid chain will be remaining attached, and A is the acceptor site, where the new transfer RNA comes up with its respective amino acid and joins to the messenger RNA on the triplet codon that is represented. So as a new transfer RNA comes, it attaches at the A site, that is the acceptor site, and then the ribosomal unit moves along the track of messenger RNA, so that now the A site becomes P site and the amino acid chain elongates, and there is now a formation of new A site, where again a new transfer RNA joins. So this process goes on and on until the messenger RNA is exhausted and the last codon that it represents terminates the elongation of this process. So essentially these are the three processes: that is initiation, elongation and termination, which occurs during the protein synthesis process. Now let us have a look at the mechanism of action of aminoglycosides. The plasma membrane that is present for the gram negative bacteria are double layered, that is, there is an outer membrane, then between the two membranes there is a periplasmic space, and then there is a inner membrane. So this double layer of membranes gives it protection against the outer environment. Gentamicin or any aminoglycoside enters through the porine channels, so that it has now crossed the outer membrane and come inside the periplasmic space. The transfer of this aminoglycoside into the cytoplasm now requires a specialized transporter which expends energy and requires oxygen for the same. So this transfer requires oxygen per se. This is the reason why aminoglycosides won't enter into bacteria which are anaerobes, or there are bacteria who are facultative anaerobes, that is, whenever there is oxygen available, these bacteria will have this mechanism of utilizing oxygen. In that case, aminoglycoside might enter into their cytoplasm, but when there is no availability of oxygen, these bacteria will shut down the oxygen utilizing process, so that these aminoglycosides won't be able to enter the anaerobic cytoplasm. That is why the anaerobes are not acted upon by these drugs, while only aerobic bacteria can be killed by aminoglycosides. So as these aminoglycosides enter into the cytoplasmic space, they attach to the either 30S unit, 50S unit, or at the interface of both of them, that is the 30S and 50S unit of the ribosome. When gentamicin or any aminoglycoside attaches to the 30S unit, the initiation is blocked, that is, the transfer RNA that is going to join at the acceptor site is blocked by gentamicin, so that there is no initiation of the process. Suppose the protein synthesis was underway and there had been a chain that is formed and elongation process is going on, and gentamicin then attaches to the acceptor site. What happens is that it will terminate the process of protein synthesis prematurely, that is, it will cause premature termination of protein synthesis. In this way, the protein that has been formed will be incomplete and won't have any functional activity. The third mechanism by which aminoglycosides can act is they will cause misreading of the codons on the messenger RNA, that will lead to formation of abnormal amino acid chains, which will again be of no use functionally. But resistance to aminoglycosides is well known, and using these drugs individually has led to formation of resistance against these antibiotics. So this resistance has occurred due to either failure of permeation of the antibiotic. This might be due to the change in the transporters that bring about entry of the aminoglycosides. So they will have less affinity to aminoglycosides, therefore there won't be entry of aminoglycosides inside the cytoplasm. The other mechanism of resistance could be low affinity of the drug for bacterial ribosome. So the ribosomes will not attach to these aminoglycosides, and therefore the mechanism won't be effective. There can also be another mechanism by which aminoglycosides can act, that is inactivation of the drug by microbial enzymes. So these enzymes will deactivate the aminoglycosides by metabolizing them to inactive products. All the drugs among the aminoglycosides will show resistance if one of them has shown to have no effect on the bacteria. But this does not apply to streptomycin and amikacin, which will not show any cross resistance because they are resistant to the enzymes which metabolize the other aminoglycosides. So even if the other aminoglycosides are showing resistance, these two drugs can still be used for chemotherapy. There are typical characteristic features of aminoglycosides. Now let us see the pharmacokinetics of these drugs. All of these drugs are highly polar basic drugs. That is why if given orally, they will not show any absorption. They will be having zero bioavailability by oral route. It also means that these drugs won't be entering into the cells of the body. They will be only entering into the extracellular spaces or extracellular fluid. So there is also poor plasma protein binding. Therefore these drugs do not attach to any plasma proteins. These drugs are widely distributed in the extracellular fluid except for the CNS and the eye. These drugs are not metabolized in the body and they are excreted through the urine. These drugs have half-life of 2 to 3 hours. These drugs are very short acting, but still the daily dosing that we have discussed earlier will show its effect because of their post-antibiotic effect. Alkalinization of urine is one of the essential part of treatment of urinary tract infection because giving sodium bicarbonate to alkalinize urine will lead to concentration of these drugs into the urine, and these concentration will lead to their antibiotic effect in the urine. The antimicrobial spectrum of aminoglycosides are effective against gram-negative aerobes, which include Escherichia coli, Klebsiella pneumoniae, H. influenzae, Proteus, Serratia, Pseudomonas, Yersinia. These bacteria are known to cause urinary tract infections, respiratory infections, and in severe cases they can also lead to septicemic conditions. The mycobacteria are inhibited by streptomycin, which is the first line antitubercular drug, and kanamycin, which is also an aminoglycoside which falls under the second line antitubercular drugs. These drugs are not active against gram-positive bacilli because there is no mechanism by which they can be transported into these cells. They are also not active against gram-negative cocci and anaerobes. Again, in anaerobes there is the oxygen that is required for transfer of these aminoglycosides inside is absent. The beta-lactam antibiotics, when used along with aminoglycosides, will show synergism. This is because beta-lactam antibiotics inhibit the cell wall synthesis, and this inhibition of cell wall synthesis will effectively migrate the aminoglycoside from outside the environment into these cells and effectively cause protein synthesis inhibition. The protein synthesis inhibition, how does it lead to the death of bacteria, is that the abnormal proteins that are formed will be incorporating into the cell wall of these bacteria and lead to abnormal cell wall formation, which later on leads to death of these cells. All aminoglycosides show the nephrotoxicity as well as ototoxicity, which is typical. While talking about nephrotoxicity, streptomycin has least nephrotoxicity, and this toxicity is seen after accumulation of aminoglycosides into the proximal convoluted tubule. Drugs which are nephrotoxic, like the loop diuretics like furosemide, vancomycin, amphotericin B, or cisplatin, when given along with aminoglycosides, will show enhanced nephrotoxicity. The nephrotoxicity is seen in the form of decreased efficiency of kidney to concentrate the urine. There will be proteinuria, there will be formation of casts in the urine, and there will be fall of the glomerular filtration rate, which is thought to be due to the decrease in the prostaglandin synthesis. Remember, prostaglandins increase the glomerular filtration rate by increasing the blood supply to the nephron. Again, increase in plasma creatinine is one of the indicators of nephrotoxicity caused by aminoglycosides. The aminoglycosides show ototoxicity in the form of auditory as well as vestibular damage. The auditory damage is seen in the form of tinnitus and hearing loss. This type of damage is irreversible. Initially there is tinnitus, that is followed by loss of higher frequencies of sound, and later on, with continuation of treatment, the lower frequencies of sound as well. Patient does not perceive the loss of higher frequencies unless the audiometry of such patients is done. That is why routine audiometry of patients who are on aminoglycosides is necessary. The vestibular damage leads to nausea and vomiting initially, which is followed by adverse effects due to imbalancing of this apparatus, leading to vertigo, ataxia, and loss of balance. Remember that aminoglycosides are concentrated in the extracellular fluid except the CNS and eye. So these will also concentrate in the endolymph and perilymph of the ear. Once they are concentrated there, their diffusion into the blood is slow, which leads to their higher toxicity in the ear. The vestibular effects are more commonly seen with streptomycin and gentamicin. Auditory effects are prominently seen with amikacin, kanamycin, and neomycin, while both auditory and vestibular effects are seen with tobramycin. The neuromuscular paralysis is also seen with all aminoglycosides, more prominently with neomycin and streptomycin. This is due to decreased in the sensitivity of NM receptors that are present on the skeletal muscles against the acetylcholine, as well as decrease in the release of acetylcholine from the presynaptic neural cells. This kind of neuromuscular paralysis is not commonly seen in the healthy individuals, but in patients of myasthenia gravis or persons who are receiving the skeletal muscle relaxants. There will be prominent skeletal muscle relaxation, leading to worsening of the myasthenia gravis or prolonged skeletal muscle paralysis when in the case of skeletal muscle relaxants. This kind of paralysis can be reversed by giving intravenous calcium gluconate and intramuscular neostigmine. Remember, neostigmine is an anticholinesterase inhibitor. Therefore, it will inhibit the metabolism of acetylcholine at the junction of neuromuscular. The other effects seen with aminoglycosides are dysfunction of the optic nerve, that is scotomas, peripheral neuritis, paresthesias, that is the decrease in the sensations of face, mouth and hand. Even hypersensitivity reactions can be seen with these drugs. Precautions are to be taken while giving aminoglycosides to the patients, because these drugs are only given by parenteral route. They are not to be mixed with some other drugs and given by the same syringe. These drugs are very highly polar and they can chemically interact with any drug that is given along with it. So better give aminoglycoside separately and the other drugs separately. Children and pregnant women are not to be given aminoglycosides, because this may lead to renal defects, and the children might also have these auditory, vestibular as well as nephrotoxic effects more prominently. Patients with renal defect are also to be either given cautiously the drug or not at all, because these drugs are directly excreted through the kidney and also have nephrotoxicity. So there is a formula which tells us how much of concentration is to be given to a patient who is having renal. The aminoglycosides are used in the infections of gram-negative aerobic bacteria. The group of drug that is given by both intravenous and intramuscular route are gentamicin, tobramycin, amikacin and netilmicin. These drugs are used for infections caused by gram-negative aerobes like urinary tract infection, pneumonia, meningitis, sepsis, cystic fibrosis, peritonitis, and can also be given along with penicillin or vancomycin for treatment of bacterial endocarditis. So addition of penicillin or vancomycin is for extending the spectrum towards the gram positive bacteria. Streptomycin is used by intramuscular route for treatment of tularemia, plague. For tuberculosis, streptomycin is the first line drug and kanamycin is the second line of drug. Neomycin and paramycin are very toxic if given parenterally. That is why these drugs are only given by local route. These drugs, the neomycin is used for bowel preparation. That is, in case of abdominal surgeries, there are chances that the intestine might be cut and there will be spilling of the intestinal contents into the peritoneal cavity. So bowel preparation with neomycin will lead to decrease in the bacterial load in an inadvertent spilling of such bowel contents into the peritoneum. In patients with hepatic coma, that is hepatic failure, the metabolism of ammonia is hampered, and this ammonia that is produced by metabolism of the food particles in the intestine can lead to entry into the CNS. This ammonia is highly lipid soluble and enter into the CNS, leading to the coma of the patient. So in such patients, when neomycin is given by oral route, it is not absorbed systemically but will kill all the bacteria, aerobic bacteria, and lead to decrease in the ammonia formation. But while giving neomycin for these two indications, we have to keep in mind that neomycin can lead to toxicity to the intestinal villi that can lead to the complications later on, like steatorrhea or infections, fungal infections or opportunistic infections of the intestine. These drugs can also be used for topical use, like in the eye or in the form of cream on the skin or powder on the skin. So to summarize the uses, oral neomycin is given for the bowel preparation. Then these drugs are given for pelvic inflammatory disease, urinary tract infections, pneumonia or other respiratory tract infections, endocarditis, for bacteremia or sepsis, and topically for infections of the skin. So to summarize today's lecture, aminoglycosides are highly polar basic drugs. They inhibit the protein synthesis by freezing the initiation, terminating the elongation and misreading of the messenger RNA. These drugs are effective against gram-negative aerobes. These drugs show post-antibiotic effect and concentration dependent killing. These drugs are normally given by parenteral route and they remain in the extracellular spaces. These drugs are having narrow margin of safety, that is, a slight higher concentration might lead to more nephro and ototoxicity. These drugs are not metabolized in the body and excreted unchanged in the urine, and these drugs show nephrotoxicity, ototoxicity and neuromuscular toxicity. That is all from my side. Thank you very much for your patient listening.